Okay, we have got to the end of the fourth day of questioning of Peter Francis, the undercover police officer, HN43, who infiltrated anti-racist groups and reported on family justice campaigns between 1993 and 1997. Uniquely among former undercover police officers, he went whistleblower in 2010. I'm joined by Evelyn Lubbers from the Undercover Research Group. We finally got to the end of his questioning, including the further questions and his own cross-examination by his own lawyer. What have you made of what we've heard?
Well, the last bit was focused on his well-being or his unwell-being. He was asked how much welfare and how much support he had received after he was pulled and after he got sick. It was rather shocking, or maybe not for those of us who know more, is that
shocking but not surprising.
Oh, that's a good one. So they didn't have any welfare. They told him to go, or they thought he should see a counselor, but then said as he had left the STS, he couldn't see their counselor because the operation needed to stay secret, and he was no longer one of them. And then he got referred to psychologist or psychiatrist, I can't remember, off the mat. But there he wasn't allowed to talk about the STS. So he was like, every time I would go there for weeks, and they would ask, and she would say, I know you can't talk about your work, but how are you? And that was like totally useless for him, because that was one of his problems, the fact that he couldn't leave the person he was, or that, and all the anger that had built up into him, he couldn't talk about it at all. So he went without any help for a long time. And I guess that has also sort of prolonged the history of his illness. He's still not well.
Yeah, he went on from that to talk about how he felt that police officers should not be infiltrating political campaigns. They shouldn't be deployed against activists. Except for counterterrorism, for organised crime, that the police were in the right place to do that job, but not against activists. He said it was the security services job, but he also said that that the vast majority of people who were spied on by spy cops were people looking to progressively improve society for the better. Which I think that's like kind of that kind of covered it really. There were a number of further questions. Nothing particularly illuminating, I thought. Turned out that the person from the construction industry who his former sergeant met with was Lord McAlpine, which we kind of guessed, because when he gave the name, he was asked, "Is that the name of the company or the name of the individual?"
Yeah.
Which obviously McAlpine is.
Yeah. But then, on the other hand, it's quite unbelievable that Lord McAlpine himself would meet with the ST or with the special branch.
So apparently, his former sergeant was a former close protection officer for Lord McAlpine.
True. So that might be sort of the old boys' network, like a backdoor in for Lord McAlpine to get his information. That might be the same.
There was a cross-examination by Maya Silkand, his lawyer. She took him through like some of his reports, and really kind of got him to confirm that yes, there was a huge number of his reports missing, particularly the pro formas and the post-event assessments for protests and vigils and marches by Black Justice family campaigns. And he said yes, there was a lot missing. Also pointed out that none of his raw reports were shown. He's never been shown any of his raw reports. Now it's been confirmed that the raw reports that he and other undercover officers wrote were kept in a box. That they were used then by the back office staff, in his case John Webb, to write up what the reports that we do see. These are often composite. They often include, what John Webb thinks on top of what we've heard from the undercover officers. So he's previously said that John Webb would be in the control room during certain demonstrations, would take reports from a number of officers and put together these composite reports. But he's never been shown his own writing, which he feels would have been an improvement if he had. He then, towards the end, he gave a large number of apologies. I have tweeted it. I don't know, just pull it up. Like the number of people that he apologized to. He apologized firstly to the family of the child whose identity he stole, the entire Lawrence family, pointing out that Stephen Lawrence had 2 siblings, not just Doreen and Neville Lawrence. So to Dwayne Brooks, who he always calls Sir Dwayne Brooks, all the family justice campaigns, and told them not to accept this thing about collateral intrusion, that they were spied on very directly. To all the activists whose lives were affected, the blacklisted workers, and to the women who he had sex with.
So, and then he continued to say that there were a few questions that he hadn't been asked, although other former undercovers had been asked, like, is the Metropolitan Police institutionally sexist, racist?
So he said that the Met Police were institutionally racist, they were institutionally sexist, they were institutionally misogynistic, and they were institutionally homophobic. On all 4, he said that yes, they were institutionally that. He got quite emotional at the end. He talked about the fact that it took 13 years to get confirmation from Metropolitan Police that he wouldn't be prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act. He paid tribute to his legal team for ensuring that. Yeah, I mean, it was interestingly, like right at the end, Dwayne Brooks walked to the front of the public gallery and shouted "Well done" and clapped. I must confess that the majority of people in the public gallery didn't join in the applause. But yeah, I mean, like, what do you make overall of Peter Francis as a witness?
I don't know. Like, he has been saying for such a long time, like maybe 13 years or longer, that he wouldn't talk now, but if he was asked to give a testimony for the inquiry, he would spill all the beans. He would tell us everything he knew. And I think from that, the expectations were high. And I do feel a bit disappointed, because but then it might not, there's loads of things he apparently is not allowed to talk about the scandals and the things that really went wrong, the people that went off the rails within the STS. There was like quite a few times where he looked at meeting and said, am I allowed to talk about this or not? And that was, probably that would have been very interesting to hear about, because we do know that many more undercover officers than we know of, or that we've heard of, have had serious mental health problems or have done like really weird things, and there have been more scandals with officers that can't be mentioned. So on the whole, I think, well, I still think, there's this mixed feeling that we talk about in the coffee breaks, that yes, he has been a whistleblower, and yes, you can see it affected his health greatly, and still. But also he was an undercover officer and he tried to be a good one. So he's done a lot of reporting that was damaging for the people he reported on. So there's always this mix, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectations were very high. I don't know how much of the blame of that lies on the shoulders of Peter Francis, to give him his due. There's a lot of things that he said back in 2013 when he was doing media interviews. He stopped doing media interviews when the inquiry was called, and he said he won't be doing any more until the inquiry publishes its report. There was a lot of suggestion there was a lot more to be said. There wasn't a lot more to be said. I mean, generally, all the stuff about the Lawrence family was already in the public domain in 2013. There was a lot of detail, which I think, for people like us, it's like, oh, that we've learned this, we've learned that. There's not some big headline that we're going to see in the media about like kind of new revelations. Essentially, no. I don't think. No.
No, I think the cooperation with building companies and companies in general, like the STS wasn't really ready to share information and to get something in return as well, as he said. So that is a good one for Dave Smith and the other people of the Blacklist support group who've always, said that they had been blacklisted based on information coming from the undercover spies, and that is now like more than confirmed, which is a good thing. What else can I think of?
I think there's a great. I mean, there's a great deal of like individual information. I mean, particularly on the blacklisting thing. You know, Dave Smith, seeing that report which Peter Francis wrote about him. I mean, Peter Francis claimed that he got confused. That it wasn't true. That Dave Smith didn't carry a knife. But this idea of putting violent on people's reports, which he did a great many times.
And all of them did, but he confessed of doing it.
I mean, one thing I'd really like to address, and I think it's a little bit sensitive because it refers around Peter Francis's mental health, but it's something he addressed when he was just at the end there. That he talked about how angry he got and how he was known as Mr. Angry within the SDS, but that it was put. He told in advance. He said that he wouldn't be able to go there when it came to violent incidents, the public order incidents, that all these things sort of merged together in his mind, that he wouldn't be able to do it. But he also said that if he was pushed on it, he would get angry, which meant that David Barr didn't push him on any of the public order stuff, which I think, given that Peter Francis is one of the few undercover officers who has been, has said that, it was around a lot of violence, there was a lot of fighting, to be so vague about that, apart from when it wasn't.
Well, he does remember punching people, but he doesn't remember when that was and in which
apart from when he does.
Apart
from when he does. We heard about the William Shakespeare pub, we heard about the McDonald's, we heard, there were plenty of times where he did, very inconsistent. Now I understand, I want to be clear about this, I understand that mental health affects people in very different ways, and I'm not like minimizing or trying to downplay what the effects of complex personality disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and the various things that Peter Francis has been diagnosed with. But it's it's very convenient, and it's been convenient to his. No, I'm not criticizing Peter. There's a lot to criticize Peter Francis for, and I'm not criticizing for his mental health. I really like to make that clear. But there were a few things, particularly, he's labelled people as violent, and that has had a profound effect on their lives. Now he's apologized for that, but he's also stood by his reports.
So that is the mix.
And he stood by those reports, and he has repeated them during this questioning. And in some cases, he has done it in the face of all the evidence. And he set it up that he can't be pushed on those things, and I'm very uncomfortable about that.
True. Well, yeah. The point is, he still has two people in his head or in himself. It's the undercover officer who wants to be acknowledged and wants to be complimented and wants to be invited to the reunion, and the other one is the one. The whistleblower who in hindsight sees whatever what damage has been done, not just to him but also to other people, and that is must be impossible to live with.
I mean, it is one area of this whole story which I have avoided, the looking into the psychological kind of impact on the undercover officers themselves. I don't care. That's not where I'm coming from personally, and I know some people are interested in that sort of stuff, and this is on that sort of thing. But I did find him talking about the most angry he ever got was when they failed to invite him to the 40th anniversary reunion, and that it was because that he had been disloyal. That was the reason given. And he said, if they think that that's disloyal, I'll show them disloyalty. And then he contacted Tony Thompson, who was the writer of the book The Infiltrators, which was about some CO10, 215, met officers, SO10, not CO10, SO10 officers who had infiltrated on a short-term basis in a way that undercover projects are normally done. And he contacted him partly because there was a line in the book that there's no such thing as long-term undercover. And he's like, well, I was a long-term undercover. Do you want to speak to me? And that kind of started the ball rolling. They couldn't get a book published, so they ended up doing an
interview.
An interview in the Observer on the 14th of March, 2010. This is quite significant for me because this was the time when myself and other people within my group decided that it was probably likely that Marco was an undercover officer. He had already disappeared from our group at the time, but it was this thing that it had turned on that if he had been invited to that 40th anniversary reunion, he would never have gone whistleblower.
Maybe yes, yeah. But that is what I just mentioned, that to be acknowledged and to be part of that team and part of, and he wasn't very positive about most of his colleagues or contemporaries, but still it was so important to be part of that. Like if there was a containment plan and if Bob Lambert tried to, who was his manager, tried to get him to the reunion.
Supposedly, I mean, that's what Bob Lambert told him.
Which
I find it really weird that like Peter Francis believed that Bob Lambert. I mean,
and still seemed to believe he doesn't have any hard feelings, And well, that was also funny because that was when he suddenly said that all special branches are Masons, and that Bob Lambert wasn't, but that they had some kind of Mason-like decision about him.
I mean, he used Masonic terminology about blackballing. I mean,
whatever. Yeah. No, but there's an important crux sort of moment, like you say, if he would have been invited, maybe he wouldn't have become a whistleblower. So thank you, STS, for creating your own whistleblower.
Just a comment there from Jack Shepherd. Jack Shepherd is the cover name of Chris Bryan from the Undercover Research Group. It's not really a cover name. I'm taking the piss. He's got a silly name on Facebook for some reason. He says, after such a long build-up, I guess it was always going to be hard to live up to the expectations. I think that's very true. I think, it has been 12 years since the majority of those revelations in the media by Peter Francis. And there was a lot put on it. It was kind of inevitable that it wasn't going to be that big a deal.
The point is that on his revelations are the reasons for this inquiry. So
it's not the only reason for the inquiry. Yeah, no. It's something which, we've had it with so many people. Doreen Lawrence said that, if they'd only investigated the killers of her son, then we wouldn't be here. The inquiry wouldn't have happened. Peter Francis says, if he was invited to that 40th anniversary, then the inquiry wouldn't happen.
Women hadn't found out.
That was
anyway, I think it's enough for today.
There's a lot more that could be said, but Evelyn's had enough. So we'll be back again next week. On Monday, we'll be hearing from Alison, who was the woman who was deceived into a long-term intimate relationship by Mark Jenner, cover name Mark Cassidy, who infiltrated anti-fascist and anti-racist groups. That should be very interesting. Notably, Alison was one of the women who cooperated in the undercover Love and Lies Exposed on ITV, which included a lot of the home video footage that she'd taken. She was a media studies teacher at the time, so she had a home video at a time when most people didn't. I think that footage really brings home the reality of living with an undercover cop. Jack Shepherd, Chris Bryan, has commented again. Totally agree about the convenience regarding memory loss. Yeah, man, innit? Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I don't want to be, I was kind of nervous about saying it because I don't want to be sort of, kind of downplaying mental health issues, but it is very convenient. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, with the memory loss and the mental health issues, it is logical that we are a bit cynical about it because so many undercover officers hide behind it, or like Agent 81 was like 2 years ago able to prepare a 72 pages personal statement, and now he's not in a good state enough to. It might be, but he's so crucial, and we would have love to hear from him, and he's not the only one. There's so many of them.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back again on Monday. I won't do a Twitter Spaces this evening, but I will do tomorrow or Saturday even possibly to catch up with that. I am still continuing to do those. I wonder how much use they are. I think they're useful in their own way, but they're a lot of work. If people can give me some feedback about those. I've stopped doing those short form videos with the scripted thing because it was just too much work. I know that I got far more views than anything else I do, but I think that was just purely like a outreach exercise. And that's not why I'm doing this. I'm trying to do like a complete coverage. So, even though it was more popular, I stopped doing that one, which doesn't make any sense on one level, but there we go. All right. Thanks for joining us. See you all on Monday.